r/ask Reddit. You're at a job interview. You get the "what is your biggest weakness" question. What is your answer? Confidence. Need to stop second guessing myself and realize that I'm good. My boss recently told me I don't have anything to prove to them, and I already have his respect and trust. It meant so much to hear that. This is really a very cool thing for your boss to say, and very good for you. You have clearly worked hard to earn the respect you have. I'm not sure that this is the same thing as the interview answer above though. Your bosses know you. They know your strengths and your weaknesses and are very happy with you. It does not mean that you should not be introspective and determine how best to make yourself the best you can be. None of us are perfect, but knowing you are appreciated by those whose opinion matters is very important. Honestly, it goes a really long way just to have a supervisor say that you are an appreciated employee and that they feel like you're doing a good job. I'm so glad this happened to you. A boss said it to me once, and I felt so much better about my job. I was explaining a decision I had made about pricing that didn't need to get his approval, and he said, "I hired you because I trust you to do your job. You've done a great job so far, so I have no reason to not trust this decision." This was 3 months in. Compared to what I'm dealing with now, I moved states, so I have a new job. About 6 months now. I miss being trusted. That's a good boss. If you haven't already, you should make a point of telling them that being told that was very appreciated. Honest positive feedback, like you received, is very valuable and will encourage them to keep doing it. Terrified at public speaking is usually the one I go with. It's fairly relatable, but easy to brush off by saying I get past it through practice. It also has the benefit of being true. It's socially acceptable to be bad at public speaking. You don't do it enough. Best answer emo. Edit. I mean actually public speaking, not group meetings, not being a teacher etc. Microphone speaking. Yes, some jobs this is a bad idea. I'm not good at something I don't have experience in. Majority of people do not have experience public speaking in front of a crowd. If you apply to team leader jobs or other jobs where it will be necessary to hold meetings or talk at meetings about the work you do, I could definitely see this answer disqualify you. This is what I've been thinking about with an interview I have coming up. I'm terrible public speaker and get very nervous. But if it's something I'm knowledgeable about, I have found I can push through it, as I know that I know what I'm talking about. Then say that. The question is not about sharing your deepest flaw, but showing that you are self-aware, can admit when wrong, and most importantly are working on improving. Explain how you are limited by the flaw, how you are mitigating the impact, and how you are working on improving yourself in that aspect. That's the key mo. The important part is how you address and compensate for your weakness. I can be forgetful, so I carry a notebook to ensure I don't miss anything important. Think. Number 1. What is the weakness? Number 2. How does it affect your performance? Number 3. How do you compensate? For example, number 1. I can be too brief in my explanations of what went wrong because I assume people have more knowledge than they do. Number 2. As a result, sometimes people get confused or dismiss my instructions, leading to problems. Number 3. As a result, I've learned to always follow up the ensure they get it and watch for body language that indicates they might be confused. So it starts as a negative, but your compensation turns it into a positive. While I agree, I lost a job for answering exactly this. I was applying for a sales position and was given the okay by the manager A. While I was going through the final steps of paperwork etc. Manager A changed position, so now I had to interview with the manager B. Manager B asked me this goddamn question and I mentioned public speaking as a weakness that I was working on. Dude was like, "Oh crap, that's not good." And I didn't get the job. Though I guess it wasn't a good look for a sales position, so I blame myself for not preparing a better answer. God, I hate this freaking question. Well, now you can say your greatest weakness is giving inappropriate answers to interview questions. The trick to this question is to not just acknowledge weakness, but to explain what you've learned from it, progress you've made in dealing with that weakness, and how you actively overcome it. Ideally your weakness would be hard to recognize by others. This is especially true if that weakness pertains to the job which you are applying for. Also, if that weakness does potentially apply to that job, acknowledge any steps you would be taking to ensure you would still be successful in that role. Taking classes, reading books, speaking exercises. Honest answer followed by how you're improving. I tend to procrastinate, but I keep that at bay by sticking to a to-do list, etc. My last job had very vague to-do lists. They were pretty much the same thing every shift. Stock times department, check dates, rotate stock, fill balloon corral, etc. So in an interview I just use that as an example, FPR staying on task. Then they hit me with, well, how do you make sure you do things on your list? My dumb boss was like, I'm not really sure what you're asking. Just do it. They want a simple answer. Something like, I have the list written down in a folder, and I check it at the start of the day, and cross off a task when it's done. Then at the end of the day, when I sign out or clock out, I check the list, and if anything isn't crossed I double check it was done before leaving. In short, they just want you say you cross things off a list. This might only be applicable to someone newly out of college or applying for entry-level jobs, but I had a professor tell me to say a lack of experience. If you're applying for an intro-level job it's expected. It's a weakness that's not really your fault, and you can spin it as a reason you should get the job. Actually, this could be applicable to every job that doesn't fit anything you did before. For example, as a programmer, I might have 5 years experience, but I never worked on framework X or with language Y. I once said in an interview I can do anything. I just may haven't gotten around to learning it yet. I do this. I always say, well, since I'm still a student, lack of practical experience in this field, most of my knowledge is theoretical from class. However, I'm excited or motivated to apply what I learned in class to the real world. Always something that can be turned into a positive. This is great. Thank you. No problem. Another good one is, whenever they ask, why do you want to work here? I always research before certain things the company does that are special or tied to their mission. So for example, if a company volunteers and donates every Christmas or they have a leadership program for women, I always weave it into my answer by saying something along the lines of, when I apply for jobs I always try to look for companies like ABC Corporation who support values that are important to me. For example, I know that ABC Corp volunteers and donates every holiday season to the Children's Hospital, and volunteering is something that I cherish because I believe in giving back. Or, I would love the opportunity to work for a company like ABC Corporation because your values are aligned with my own. For example, I know that you. Basically this is a good way to slip in that you did your research on the company, and they always love this kind of answer because it shows a human side and lets them learn about you as a person. I'm terrible at interviews, got me my job. I'm going to try that, but I feel like they'd say, ha ha ha. No, but seriously though. Then you say, I'm serious, and stare at him with a blank expression in dead silence, thus proving claim. The year is 2015, and I'm interviewing for my first job at an unnamed game studio. I'm super nervous. I did the pre-interview tests, and they liked them. And I get the question. I get really nervous, and I talk a lot and ramble. It's pretty much word vomit until my brain catches up with my mouth, until I catch up with what I just said, and most of the time I can't really remember the question. It got a lot of laughs in the room, but I really couldn't remember at the time what the director just asked me. Did they ever name the game studio? Untitled Game Studio. You might have heard of their Goose Game. My usual go-to is that I have had difficulty with taking criticisms personally, especially against me when in a leadership role. I then follow up with talking about how I am working on it and feel I've improved as I've taken on roles with more responsibility. It is an annoying question, but if you can find something to talk about honestly and also explain how you are working to improve it, you're golden. I have difficulty taking criticisms personally. Sounds like something you might want to work on. The obvious one are those. I'm a perfectionist, I suppose. It's one of my biggest weaknesses. But they are so cheesy and BS. The best is just being honest. My biggest weakness? I'm a fat mofo, and if anyone leaves food on my desk it's getting eaten, no questions asked. Edit. I realize perfectionism is an actual weakness, but many fresh off the boat graduates think it's a really good line in a job interview, and have sadly ruined this for actual perfectionists. This is my point. I used this in a job interview before I knew that it's a cliche response, but it seemed to go over well. Maybe because I genuinely meant it. It was for a bookstore job. And I explained that if I'm supposed to just straighten a section, but I notice that it's not alphabetized, there are books from a different section there, etc. I'm going to have a hard time just straightening the books visually and moving on. I'll want to put them in the proper spots, dust, etc. Which is a real problem when time is of the essence. I did get the job though, and one of my favorite tasks was zone maintenance. Scanning each item, straightening, dusting, making sure the size and shelf labels were accurate. It was very satisfying, plus I got to see our products and get gift ideas. My thing exactly. In my last job interview, which got me the job, I framed it as a time management issue rather than a perfectionism issue. I tend to get hung up on minor details, but I've been building a habit of taking a step back every so often during the day to look at the big picture and regroup. Just had an interview. Was honest. Remembering people's names. I think most people can relate to that too. And I mentioned that I have developed strategies to make sure it doesn't get in the way. Got the job offer. Yeah, I feel like that's a good one. When you first meet someone there are so many social cues to pay attention to other than someone's name that oftentimes I will forget it within 5 minutes. I don't do good work when I'm multitasking. Since I know this about myself, when I'm managing multiple projects at once, I allot time to concentrate on each separately. Any manager that doesn't have enough people skills or self-awareness to know that everyone is shitty at doing 2 high-level thinking tasks at once is not someone I want to work for. Ability to multitask is a requirement that I have seen on so many job posts though. That's true, but an interview shouldn't just be the employer deciding if you're right for the company, but should also be you deciding if the company is right for you. If it isn't right for you, then it's a good sign to move on. If you need this particular job, then you may need to fudge the interview. That's a good answer in my opinion. Mine might be something about having to shift levels, so having to produce a high level strategic output and a detail heavy output at the same time seems to be a real struggle. The answer is also time allocation, I think. As a hiring manager, I'd like this answer. It's honest and generally true for everyone. And it doesn't hurt that I believe multitasking is overrated. The time spent mentally switching between tasks and getting back up to speed is avoidable waste. I even extend this to the team level. Where possible, everyone focuses on one thing at a time. Line projects up in a queue, rather than try to work on them all simultaneously. Not everyone agrees with this philosophy though. Please like and subscribe to get more content like this.